Okay guys, here we are again. This time we're talking about animal classification. And since you don't really need to see me to hear about this, I thought I would let you see these particular posters that I have. And we're going to quickly go through all of them because this is important for us to understand as we'll begin talking about habitats and the different animals, the adaptations that they have in order to survive in their various habitats, as well as elements of the food chain and the food web, which explains to us what animals eat and what animals get eaten by. So we're going to start with insects. And if you look carefully at the list of characteristics of insects, you'll notice, as Mrs. Gregory taught you, insect bodies are divided into three parts: the head, the abdomen, and the thorax. And you all showed me that you knew that really, really well before we left. Some insects, not all of them, but some have two sets of wings. And we can think of the ant, who doesn't have any wings, right? So it's not all of them. They have two antennae, which is true of all insects. You see a butterfly there. That's a grasshopper, a different butterfly, and a ladybug. They all have two antennae. They all have 6 legs. You know it's an insect if it has 6 legs. An arachnid, that a lot of people think is an insect, is not, because it has 8 legs. A spider. Off the top of my head, I can't pull up any other ideas, but spiders are definitely arachnids. And insects, like many other classes of animals, hatch from eggs. In fact, there's only really one particular type of animal that does not hatch from an egg, and that's a mammal. So, insects, if you were to do a compare and contrast chart, would overlap with all these different animals because they all come from eggs. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm sorry, that was my cat, who happens to be a mammal. Now we're looking at amphibians, and the big thing about amphibians is that they live on land and in water. Now I told you before that this name amphibian refers to 2 lives. So one of their lives is in the water, and the other life is on land, and that's what we see with frogs and toads that start out as fish-like animals called tadpoles and then go through metamorphosis. That means that they change into animals that can now breathe with lungs and walk or hop or whatever on land. Amphibians have webbed feet. You can think of the frogs with their webbed feet. You can think of newts and salamanders. And I want to show you a picture. Right over here, that is a salamander. And over here is a really strange-looking amphibian called the axolotl. Notice that it has feet with webs, and those things sticking out of the side of its head are actually its external gills. It's a very unusual kind of animal. So here's a list of amphibians. And notice it says 7,800 species of amphibians. But you didn't even think about that. But there you have it. Frogs, toads, newts, salamanders, axolotls, and caecilians. But they're kind of similar to salamanders. All right, let's go back up here. Amphibians are cold-blooded. We'll find that reptiles also are cold-blooded. They breathe with their lungs and gills, depending on what stage of life they're in. As young animals, they have gills. They have moist, smooth skin. Moist and smooth. This is something that really distinguishes them from reptiles. Reptiles have dry, scaly skin. They usually have 4 legs. Amphibians lay thousands of small, soft eggs in the water. Remember seeing the frog eggs that looked like they were inside of a bunch of jelly. Remember those things? So they lay their eggs in the water, which is also different than reptiles. And they have smooth, moist skin. That's the amphibians. frogs, toads, salamanders, axolotls, and newts. All right, let's go on to the next classification of animals. Birds. Birds, the most important thing you can remember about birds is that they have feathers. Birds lay eggs, just like insects, just like amphibians, in a nest, not like amphibians at all. Usually 1 to 17 eggs at one time. Birds have feathers and wings, but so do insects have wings. So we don't want to confuse winged creatures. Not all winged creatures are birds. In fact, there's a mammal with wings called a bat. But the main thing to keep in mind with birds is that they have feathers. They have hollow bones which help them fly, which is another distinguishing feature that's really interesting. If their bones were not hollow, like our bones are not hollow, they wouldn't be able to fly. That's one of the reasons we can't fly. Not all birds can fly. Now you can think of the penguin, you can think of the ostrich, you can think of the emu. Those are birds that have feathers and wings, but they can't fly. Birds have 2 legs. Birds have ear holes instead of ears. So, when you look at yourself or you look at some of the other types of animals with ears that stick out, birds don't have those. They have holes in their heads. They are warm-blooded. Now, the only other type of animal that is warm-blooded is the mammal. Insects, amphibians, reptiles, and fish are all cold-blooded. That means that their body temperature changes depending on what's around them. Warm-blooded animals keep their body temperature despite what the surrounding weather is. Here's a closer look at who are birds. There are about 10,000 species of birds, including parrots, owls, penguins, toucans, hummingbirds, sparrows, kiwi, seagulls, geese, storks, swallows, ducks, peacocks, chickens. And here's some pictures. A duck, that's a bluebird, a toucan, and over here, the delightful and colorful peacock. Once again, birds. They have feathers. I'm going to go back. Amphibians have moist, smooth skin, and insects, actually they didn't mention it here, but insects have an exoskeleton. That means that the outside of their body is their skeleton. The inside is soft and squishy. So when you step on an ant, you kind of squish the inside. Mammals, that's us. Mammals have hair or fur. Now, we don't have fur, but people don't have fur, but they definitely have hair. They give birth to live young. They are the only type of animal that does not lay eggs. Mammals can make milk for their babies. Again, no other animal does that. Other type of animal does that. Mothers nurse their young with milk. They have lungs and need air to breathe. Okay? There's a lot of animals that do have lungs. Even amphibians eventually have lungs. Mammals that live on land and have 4 legs and ears that stick out. Not all mammals have 4 legs, though. Mammals are warm-blooded. Closer look at who are mammals. There are over 5,000 species, not nearly as many as insects or birds. Giraffes, dogs, cats, elephants, lions, bears, monkeys, tigers, dolphins, seals, mice, rabbits, zebras, sheep, horses, humans. We are mammals too. There's a giraffe and some adorable doggies and an elephant and a baby. Those are mammals. Now we get on to reptiles. Reptiles have scales, not fur. They have dry skin. Please remember dry skin. They usually lay eggs. Sometimes they give birth to live young. That's very, very rare, though. They breathe air with lungs. They have ear holes, just like birds, instead of ears. They usually have 4 legs. Reptiles are cold-blooded. Very different from birds because their body temperatures change with the weather or the temperature around them. Birds do not. Let's look at who are reptiles. Ooh, I'll show you pictures. Here's a crocodile, alligators also. That's a chameleon. Can you see his crazy looking eyes that go around in all kinds of circles? And there's a snake. And over here, back to the turtle. Who are reptiles? Snakes, turtles, lizards, crocodiles, dinosaurs, tortoises, alligators, chameleons. Chameleon's a type of lizard, by the way. Those are the reptiles. Remember, dry skin, not fur, not moist skin, not feathers, not exoskeleton. On to the last one. Fish. Here's fish. Fish breathe underwater using gills. They do not have lungs. They live in the water, and outside of the water, they can't live. So they're very different than the amphibian, who eventually gets to the point where it can walk on land. They can live in salt water or fresh water, depending on what type of fish. You can't take a saltwater fish and put it in fresh water. It will not survive. Likewise, you can't take a freshwater fish and put it in salt water because it won't survive. God created the fish to be in certain kinds of water, and that's where they should stay. They have scales and fins. Okay, so while reptiles have scales, they don't have fins. They lay many eggs. Fish are vertebrates, which is true of all these animals, and fish are cold-blooded, just like reptiles, just like amphibians, just like insects. All right, an important thing to keep in mind is that all of these types of animals are vertebrates. They all have what we call a backbone, a vertebrae, spine, backbone, whatever you want to call it. There are other types of animals that we call invertebrates. And these, well, actually insects are technically invertebrates. But these other types of animals they're much smaller numbers of them, or types of them. So we kind of classify them as invertebrates, and they're broken down into a lot of other subcategories, and that can get kind of confusing. So you'll learn that later on, not in first grade. Let's go through it again. Fish have scales and fins. These are the best ways to tell them apart. Reptiles have dry, scaly skin. Mammals have hair or fur. Insects have 3 body parts, the head, the abdomen, and the thorax. Amphibians have smooth, moist skin, webbed feet. And birds. Birds have feathers and wings. All right, my friends, I hope this helps you to remember all your different classes of vertebrate animals, and actually the insects, as I said, kind of crisscross. But anyway, you will be watching another or a video about habitats, which talks a little bit about why animals are the way they are tomorrow. All right, hope you enjoy this. Hope you remember. Might be a quiz or something at some point. All right, bye.